Intending to do right now, since we had very little time in many of the sessions for such incredible presentations, we wanted to offer that you could ask questions to the presenters specifically, because our topic is matriarchal visions of a future of peace. All right? So my main job is to just make sure that everyone who wants to speak will be able to speak. So if you are wanting to speak, you want to look at me so that, and I will nod and make sure that I have you down, and I'll be taking a list so that people can actually have their voices be heard, okay? So you can also make a statement rather than presenting a question, okay? So, yes? Your name.
Hi everybody, my name is Teresa Halliburton. I teach Shaolin Qigong up at UC Berkeley. A few years ago in Texas, I had the great privilege to come with Letitia Layson and some other ladies from California to a most incredible and really mind-opening event. I was so impressed by many of you that spoke at that time as well as this time, but I want to share, I was so inspired. With my group, we began to put on free clinics in San Francisco. Really, I just called it sharing before you. Now I say the gift economy. But so we share the chi and help people. So I just want to say how inspired I am by each of you, and I look forward to our collective work in the future. Thank you so much, Jen.
That's wonderful.
Okay, a couple of things I wanted to say. First of all, I have to say this has been an amazing experience. This is the first time I've been to one of these conferences, and wow. Just wow. You guys have given me so much to think about, and I don't know if I'll be able to get to it, but I hope there will be some kind of social thing later, because I haven't been able to talk to half as many of you guys as I would have liked to, and there are so many amazing people here to get to know. Yeah, the presentations have been quite mind-blowing. They've given me a lot to think about. One of the things that they've given me to think about is that I've been struck all weekend by how much overlap there's been between the things that we've been discussing here and a lot of the work that I've been doing with critical disability theory. I just, I can think of at least 5 times when I've thought, wow, there's some amazing overlap here, and that would be relevant, particularly, theories, there we go again, theories around deconstructing body normativity, theories around deconstructing high-set bars, etc. And I thought that's something I'm really looking forward to having the opportunity to explore. So. Yeah, but I wanted to mention that because it's been something that struck me at least 3, 4, 5 times this weekend.
What's your name?
What's your name?
Oh.
And your mom's name?
Oh, I'm Sarah, and my mom is Isabeau.
It's quite amazing to attend a conference like this as a mother-daughter couple. It gives you a lot to think about, but it gives you a strange perspective too, because I can see mothering in her that I really couldn't see before, and I can see childing in me that was probably pretty obvious, but I didn't really ever out of that. And I just thought, thank you so much.
My name is Wahukara from Kenya. And I am delighted once again to continue this dialogue and discuss. But I think mine is to remind ourselves the kind of challenge and responsibility that has fallen on our hands because of this experience. Sometimes people make statements, but those statements become bigger than what they stated. So I really sympathize with my sister Jean and others, because you started something that now I think it is too big, but it's still on your hands. Because of the good intentions, it's going to be very heavy on your hands because you can't put it down until you deliver it. And I am here just to give that solidarity and say, we must deliver it. We must deliver it because we have the capacity, we have the opportunity, and history has designed that we must deliver it. So it's not a question of choice, it's a question of rising up to the occasion and taking that responsibility. And I say this with confidence and determination because I don't think there is any other gathering in the world where you can have intellectuals connecting with those who are not intellectuals, and intellectuals who want to learn, who accept that they are not the authority. And that is what patriarchy doesn't have. And that is what we can celebrate that we have. So for me, I might not claim to be that intellectual in the quotes of that definition, but I affirm myself because I do think, and I do act upon my thinking. And that is so what it is to me about feminism, because I don't want to get into problem of trying to argue what it is. It is because each and every human being can think and can act. The issue is, what do you think and what do you act upon? We've seen the history of patriarchy. They think and act to destroy life. Matriarchy, feminism, whatever you want, anything that is associated with motherhood, we think and act in taking care of life free of charge. So, it will be so important for those who are endowed with that space and opportunity to be the thinkers of the time, and those whose print of word can also be taken more seriously, to wake up and first and foremost, we liberate the academia. And the academia becomes the home of truism about feminism. If we put the academia with a mindset of the feminism truism, then we shall have done justice to this 21st century. And I say this because patriarchy is known throughout history to mitigate and to mutate processes to their own advantage. So our challenge is to stop that, and we shall only stop that if we locate that we are there and we are in charge. And that's what I was saying. It is the greatest gift the African women, and I can attest that, have succeeded in doing. They have been able to rise up and say, we are here and we are not letting go, and we are the people in charge. We don't care about wars. If you read the experience of what happened in Rwanda, for example, the women were the first to cross barriers and say, okay, genocide, that was there. But now, reconstruction, what do? We go beyond, and every child, it doesn't matter whether it's a Hutu child or a Tutsi child, but these are children who need to be nurtured if we will continue and have a future. So, the endowment we have as women to cross all borders and boundaries, because we don't know borders and boundaries. That is what we need to locate in the academia. And I'm challenging those that are in the academia to take this occasion and find out how we become the scholars that they cannot, ignore. And I am saying this because they must hear our voice. They must learn that we have a voice and a face with a difference that can make another United Nations, that has another World Bank, that has another trade arrangements that is not of exchange and money and pollution and commodifying each and every bit of life. We must humanize trade. We must bring back that we have shared here for the few days we've been here, the way we've given each other, the way we have taken care of one another, the way this process started. I hear many of you giving the testimony of how you were struck by the first interaction you had this process. I interacted with the gift economy last year when I had the opportunity to be nominated the Nita Barrow Distinguished Visitor at OIC. And when I met Angie, who I met in the World Social Forum, all what we were talking is about gift from a scholar to an activist, and finally teaching at her own university. And I think the students gave a good commendation that I did teach, although I'm not a professor. So all what I am saying, the academia, because is where we generate ideas. It is where we guide the thinking process. It is where we can engage and stay engaged, because knowledge is what has confused the whole over 500 years where we are talking that we are developed in the knowledge of science, in the knowledge of philosophy, in the knowledge of everything. But my contribution is to remind the scholars, you all have been studying the anthropology that was thrown to the academia to confuse people for who they are. At one time, you call some people populations and not people, so that you can conquer them and occupy the resources. And the academia justifies that, and the academia gives the principles of how to do it. You have also studied those who are primitive, those who are barbaric, those who needed to be conquered, those who needed to be civilized, those who needed to be Christianized, those, and we have continued. And now with globalization, you are still justifying efficiency, effectiveness of the market, efficiency and effectiveness of privatization of everything. So, all what I am saying, we are a critical mass in this room to exit out of the box. And I challenge especially people from this part of the world, North America and Europe. You like looking for solutions when you are still inside the box. You can't get the solutions. You must exit from the box and get where we are, real life, where the heartbeat is, and become the scholars of what life connectedness is, not scholars of how you disconnect life for the expediency of privilege and for the expediency of, a very vulnerable and vanity, foolish way of thinking you are so powerful when you are really powerless. You are only powerful because you can talk about nuclear war or armaments. You can take war to Iraq, and we want to clap and say you are very intelligent. Although we still don't like you, we keep you in office for 2 terms only to confess that we were not aware of what we were doing. So the whole question of the mindset of the academia in the hands of women who are connected with life, is what I really challenge you. And I challenge you because in Africa, we put our wealth in our daily experience. And it's so packed in our own way of life, in our mind, in our spirit, in our dreams, and in our everything. And we pass it orally. A lot of knowledge has not been documented. So you who have the privilege to document It is the first time that you must connect with the real sources, but not the outfit of knowledge within the patriarchal arrangement that we must now and then claim our capacity to destroy, to dismantle, and offer an alternative. Thank you.
I've been to a lot of different conferences on these subjects now, and new things come up at all of them. And I want to just reiterate a few things that I had heard mentioned that I thought were especially interesting, and then see if maybe the original speakers want to make any further comments about them. So one of the things was, Marina, your talk about about Huchitan, and what you said about the performance of motherhood and even girlhood and all these things in the public spaces, and also about the constant celebration, so that feeding became a celebratory act all the time, and the celebration of the role of the females was very important in the whole community's celebration. And I want to say that I think this is an excellent tactic to reconstruct something to bring to other places, and that we should try to put female performances and performing of motherhood much more central than it has been in all of our societies. And of course, one of the things is media. And I want to say that recently I was working on a radio piece about the World Breastfeeding Challenge, collaborating with a woman from Toronto. And she's a young mother herself. She asked me, she said, well, do you have many pieces about mothering in wings? And I had to say, actually, no, not so many. So this is something that I'm pleased is really coming to the fore, and to be able to say more about that. The next thing I want to mention, and in connection with mothering and also with public spaces, Nane's piece, is she here, about the placenta, was just a stunning revelation. I've never seen a placenta in all my life, and there were those images, and the whole bringing birth into public. I know, there have been artists who've done it and so forth, but anyway, that was totally stunning. And she lives in Vancouver, so I hope to talk to her again.
She's not here. Her sister had a baby yesterday.
Oh, how nice.
Oh, me goodbye.
Okay. And then the last one, I mean, there were so many things that did impress me. Oh, I just want to mention about the eco-village. I was really, really happy to see that. And then Barbara Mann, your talk, and also Karen talked about the same thing. In particular, when you said, Barbara, about that the leaders were shamed, or the people were shamed not for being wrong, but for being arrogant and for not listening to the other people. And then when Karina was talking, and you were saying to me that the main thing that you have as a tool for getting some of these things changed, or one of the main tools, was to shame the people who are making these decisions with the terrible reality of what those things meant. And so, anyway, what?
Shaming doesn't.
The shaming does nothing. Okay, so it wasn't the shaming. What does it do?
It costs
nothing. It costs nothing. Oh, come on. That was what I wanted people to do, is come up. I'm finished, actually. Yeah.
We have lost democracy in the sense that it's the corporations who sponsor the politicians. And even though this was found out in the 3 elections in which I participated, that they were giving hundreds of thousands of euros to those who ended up in the government, even when it came out and these were criminal acts, the politicians have not stepped down. They refuse to step down. So there's no morality anymore. There's no ethics. There's no sense of honor. And I think that those of us who don't have much money to run for office, we have to think of other tools. And I have another very cheap tool. This was my campaign gift. I had thousands of these, and I was spreading them out with messages as part of that whistleblower campaign that I was talking about on the gift list. So I was giving different messages to different people. To the elderly, I said, go to the health center, and when you're not getting help anymore, or when they are overcharging you, whistle and ask the bureaucrats and the politicians to show up. And I told the women also, if they're being stalked or something, there's a light. They can call for help. And since there's so much violence, Finland is the most violent European country in terms of gendered violence, as the counterside of the fact that it's the most competitive country in high technology and all those things. So this has a million uses, and I only have one left with my number, 108, 104. But I'll give it to 10 because you've been the main whistleblower. And sir, I would like to also give one to Heide and a lot of other people, but I have some other gifts and they're in the hotel, so I'm sorry. But this one I happen to have in my bag. So my last hope, last thing I want to say as a hope for this continuation of our network is, please send me information on how to do something about the elderly. They are just sacrificed. They're going to be sacrificed in numbers. Every second day an elderly commits suicide in Finland because they are just abandoned. And we need, I focus that in my politics now because it's the most hot topic and most serious topic, and I think it's a shame, it's absolutely a disgrace that those people who have been giving the free gift of labor all their lives, when they finally need the gift of care, they are being exploited. For instance, if they can't afford to pay for their private homes and there's nothing else available, they have to make a deal with the bank, and they owe money in the sense that the offspring, if there are any, will have to pay for the mother's or father's care from the inheritance. So there are very outrageous plans on the way, and I want to focus on this topic, so please send me your ideas, activist ideas, and let's really do some political action as well. I mean, I do all of these things because I think every level is important, but we are so close to losing so much, even though it's going to make the way at the same time, create the conditions for the gift economy. There's going to be a lot of people hit hard by this neoliberal revolution. So please let's also work on some collective political action to damage control at least, or to shame, or whatever.
Hi, you can hear? This is good? Okay, my name is Audrey. I'll give you one name. Audrey Susan Arby. I spell it A-U-D-R-Y-E. My mother's name is Ethel. My daughter's name is Alana. And my grandbaby's name is Leilani. So there's already a line of women. First, I want to say I am so honored and touched to be among this group of women and the women that are in the other college. And I've been touched by everything that everyone has said. I'm here to offer something. I started a nonprofit some years ago. It's called Ashe. People from West Africa may not understand that terminology. We spell it A-C-H-E-E. It's adapted from the Yoruba peoples of Nigeria term Ashe, which means, in the way I understand it, the gifts and blessings of the Creator. And through Ashe, I have land, literally in my name, in the Republic of Benin to set up a healing center, which we're calling the Ashe Light Center. So to say that I was interested in Angela's Eco Village and the woman whose name I can't remember, who spoke at the college also about Eco Villages, whoever she was, Lori, yes, I'm totally interested in connecting with that, and obviously with all of my sisters here. Certainly the ladies that live in Africa. I'm going to be joining a group that's based in Florida called Ghana Ma, spelled Ghana, G-H-A-N-A, Ma, M-A-A, which means Ghanaian mothers, mothers of Ghana. And one of the projects they're currently working on, and I throw this also out, this is a group of mothers and women, is eradicating FGM. And if there's anyone here who does not know what that means, it means female genital mutilation. And I'm not going to go into any long discussion of what that is, other than to say, in my personal opinion, that needs to be something that is completely disappeared from the earth to the extent that nobody even knows what those words mean. I am going to do my best to come in New York, which is my home. And as my book gets ready, the Mother's Manual, A Spiritual and Practical Guide to Child Rearing and Motherhood, which I'm bringing out as an ebook because it's more financially affordable. I have not yet been able to find a way to have it gifted to me, to have it printed. I'm also going to be offering the Mother's Manual sampler free of charge, which is my gift to the world. It's a 100th page free ebook, which I invite you all to get. We're praying and hoping and intending and allowing and all of that it be ready, and the website, which is themothersmanual.com, will be ready in December. So please go there. And I hope I've made a contribution here. If in any way, shape, or form anything I may have said was taken by anyone in any way that's hurtful, I truly apologize from my heart. I really come from love in all that I am. My intention is to be a contribution always. So my sisters, I thank you. Ashe, Aho, Aloha, and Namaste. And my sister from South Africa, perhaps you know a song that my daughter was taught when she was little, Siyahamba? You know it? So maybe I'm not going to be necessarily the one that sings it here, okay? But perhaps in our singings of songs, we can also do that one, which I will join with everyone, but I would rather not be the one presenting it right now with the microphone. So thank you.
I'm Nina Simons from Pioneers in New Mexico, and there are a lot of things I want to say. One is just, is it Karina? There's a model about elder health care. That's a gift economy model that's happening in Japan right now that's extraordinary. And women and people all over the country are trading taking care of each other's elders who are close to them. So it's a fantastic entrepreneurial opportunity, and I just want to toss it out because I may not remember later. And I am feeling, pardon? I don't have it. If you email me afterwards, I'll find it. Okay, I know I have it in the history of Pioneers, I just have to look it up. I also have immense gratitude for being here. I feel like very much of a younger in this community, and I feel incredibly honored to be here with you and grateful for including me. And like, part of what I've experienced in meeting all of you is a kind of intellectual foundation that my emergence has actually stood on without fully being as mindful of it as I could have been. And so I just am feeling really, really thankful to you for all the years and time and breaking ceilings and courage that it's taken to help us get to this moment. Yeah. And the idea of the women reclaiming the academy is incredibly exciting to me. And also, I have to say, as someone who doesn't work in the academy, I'm a cross-pollinator. So for me, what's most exciting is how these ideas migrate out into civil society, because I see the task ahead. I'm someone who, you know, one of the false separations in my life was between arts and sciences. And so when I was in school, I hated science. And recently, up until very recently, I have been very resistant about the information about climate change. And even though I have been steeped in this information for years and years, I've kind of gone, not my issue, not my issue. Well, somehow my own denial has been broken through in the last year. And visiting with friends and colleagues and Indigenous elders who have been doing work around climate change and around the world for a long time, what's really clear to me is that the stakes are really high, and the urgency, as much as I have been resistant to a patriarchal model of urgency, I think the urgency is real right now, from the mother. And so I was so grateful when Angela said this morning, where are you, Angela? There's two Angelas, okay, and I'm confused because I don't know you well enough. I think you said it, that these ideas will be welcomed. And as long as we meet resistance, we have to be rigorous with ourselves about reframing and re-articulating and inventing new words. Like, I have a suggestion that we stop calling each other guys. It drives me crazy. I know it's hard to say women all the time, and maybe we need a new word, but let's stop calling each other guys. But we have to be rigorous with ourselves about reframing and reinventing how we show up with this work, so that it can be welcomed, so that it can be embraced by everyone, not just by women, but by everyone. Because I think the future of nothing less than the future of our species, our children, depends on it, and the future of our own qualities of life. And, let's see, okay, so just two more things. One of the things that I've learned from pioneers is that in nature, the places of greatest fertility are the places where two or more ecosystems meet. So where the river meets the ocean, where it's wherever at least two or more differences come together. And that's been a very powerful recognition for me, that we need the differences in order to really strengthen and potentize our capacity to change the world. And I have developed my own theory that really the greatest catalyzer of effective social movements is multiculturalism. And I actually think it's not only multiculturalism, but multi-generationalism. And so what I see us tasked with is, how do we get so much better at reaching across the differences that divide us, at finding the ways to translate these ideas for young women who they are so relevant for and who don't even know how hungry they are to hear them. And how do we get better at reaching out of the academy and into civil society and translating these ideas that are so essential in in the vision of the new world that's being born and that we are all midwifing, so that we can catalyze a revolution from the heart of nature and from the heart of the mother, which is what we're all here to do. So, and I have to say, one of the things that really helped me understand about that multicultural diversity, the incredible value of diverse perspectives, was realizing that the suffragette movement in the United States was really informed and inspired by partnership with the Haudenosaunee women from the Iroquois Six Nations. And that's, that's not something that most people know, but so is the US Constitution, of course, is, seeded by that culture. So we owe a great debt of gratitude, and the fact that Jen and Haida have seen the vision to bring us all together in a way that recognizes the value of our diversity, the value of our commitment to a feminist-inspired world, and the recognition that Indigenous cultures actually know everything we already need. It's all here, right? What we need is the political will to help make the change happen. So here's another nature parable, and then I'll shut up. In nature, in the West, in the Rocky Mountain West where I live, there's a phenomenon which happens when it's going to be a very, very cold, hard winter. And what happens, what happens is that all kinds of birds who don't usually fly together decide to cooperate. And you see wrens and warblers and woodpeckers and all these different kinds of birds that usually stay to their own kind. But together, they collaborate and they fly through the canyons in order to find where the berries are and where the food is. And I suggest to you that what we are doing and what we are tasked with is interspecies flocking, because those berries are the ideas that are going to seed this revolution, this reinvention of how we live on Earth. And so to all of you, a deep, deep bow of gratitude. Thank you.
I have two questions. I'm not going to take your time by thanking you because so many people have already thanked you, and it really has to go without saying. This is such an extraordinary experience. It's just literally mind-blowing. So rather than focus on my feeling that this is so extraordinary, I want to ask two questions, and I want to set up the first one by saying, I've heard here local models, which have been extraordinary, and then I've seen a vision for a world. There's a complex space in the middle between that local and that world that I'm a little bit unclear about. And I haven't heard really addressed here, and I would like to hear it addressed here by a number of people that I think could do that. And I want to make a small suggestion about that, which is there's a model that hasn't been represented here. I'm an anthropologist by training. And part of that training was about Australia, not a lot of it about Australia, but one of the things about Australian Aboriginal culture that's just remarkable. Sarah and I will be at a conference on psychogeography in 2 weeks, and we're both presenting papers that come from this material. Hers is very different from mine. But in Australian society, many languages, but it's like a jigsaw puzzle. Think of a jigsaw puzzle. My negative forms your positive. I don't take land from yours because it would literally distort my relationship to my local. And this notion of the jigsaw puzzle is so brilliant. There's an overarching paradigm, but there's also an immense respect for locality. And I just want to throw out that among the sort of maternal notion and the gift economy, we also need to think about that intermediary space, and it might be the jigsaw puzzle. So that's number one, and I wanted to see if I could throw that out and see if people could address that. And the other is really about Western society, but because we're facing this neoliberal onslaught under, quote, economic necessity, how do we, I mean, Mike Harris was elected by most people here, even though he deconstructed all of those social safety nets. And we're facing that again. How do we get the people that voted for him, all those people, to change a mindset? And I think somebody just spoke earlier before me about reaching out and figuring out how to make that communication. Because while the revolution is here, are they going to vote Mike Harris in fear the next time around? Are they going to vote against unionism the next time around? How do we actually intercede in some way between that neoliberal takeover that's happening all over the world? I don't understand how to do that, frankly. I really don't know how we could do that. So those are the two questions I want to know. The revolution starts here, but can we birth it against that neoliberalism? That's one. And two, that middle ground of complexity, that articulation between locality and the mother globe. That's it.
A little bit in response, oh, Vicki Noble. A little bit in response to Isabel, and also just because it's been on my mind the whole weekend. I want to talk about an event that we collaboratively produced in San Francisco last year, very spontaneously. I'd like to take enough time to make it a story. I started to have a really strong reaction when they started to put I hated it when they took Hillary Clinton down. I loved her. Forgive me, but I do. I love her. I think she's an Amazon. But when they took her down, it was so brutal. And she stood her ground so well. So that was great modeling. Then they started to put Sarah Palin up in her place. And they actually started to talk on the radio a lot. I don't watch TV, but I do listen to the news on the radio. And on NPR, you know, National Public Radio, which is like a facsimile of Fox or something at this point, they started to talk about it as if it was a serious suggestion that she was going to be a sort of a feminist candidate, and that she was, you know, that women were going to get interested. It seemed it was so insane, and I had a visceral reaction, and I write these letters to my email list just for fun every now and then, and I rant, and I did that about the Sarah Palin. Somebody sent a Sarah Palin book list around, and I sent it out to my list, and then my list, a lot of people on my list wrote and said it was a hoax, and you should be more careful, and you should check with Snopes, or whoever it is, Snopes, whoever, yeah. And you know, it's really important for progressives to be really careful and like dot our I's, and because, you know, and I thought, no, it isn't. That's how we lose. Every time we try to be like the opponents, and we're not like that, and we'll never outdo them. And what we have is joie de vivre, and they don't have that. The conservatives, they do not have that, and they don't even hardly recognize it. And so I got so inspired by my own idea, my own picture of remembering really feminism, you know? I thought, wait a minute, this is not feminism. What is wrong with everybody? Don't you remember feminism? And so I sent this letter out that said, you know, don't you remember the 70s? Don't you remember we broke out of the box? It wasn't about being careful. It was about being absolutely liberated. And that's what we have. It's Shakti. We have that, you know? So let's use it, and let's be dancing in the streets instead of being careful. And so hundreds of women responded to my letter and said, I'll go dancing in the streets with you anytime. Thanks for speaking for me. So then I said, okay, let's do it. And so a bunch of us, I told one friend who runs a feminist dance studio in San Francisco, and she organizes events, and then we called in other friends. I think I maybe put a letter out to the list saying, okay, we're going to do it. And we got an organizing group together, very spontaneous. These are not organizers particularly, but just feminist women and spiritual leaders. And so pretty soon we had Starhawk and Max Dashu and my friend Chrissy Kiefer, who runs the studio, and myself and some others, and it was very exciting, and we met a few times. Everybody very easily took responsibility for some portion of it. It came together with no effort. Somebody brought pictures, then Max made a gorgeous poster that was very lively, and we decided we would break the spell. That was our image, break the spell. Bring your brooms, we're going to sweep the place clean. We're going to sweep out the old, and we're going to bring in the new. And it was Halloween, so it was 3 days before the election. And we didn't want to be for Obama particularly, we just wanted to be breaking the spell. And so it wasn't even very partisan. It was just like, let's get that old energy out. And we did it, and the weather was supposed to be terrible, so people were, were bowing out of it. And so Starhawk and I both wrote letters saying, but when you're doing a ritual like this, it does not rain, so please come. And we didn't know if anyone would show up, but we got the thing together and got the music together and everything. And yeah, that's right. We got the banners from Lydia, and we put them on big sticks and carried them in procession. And we had 500 people, mostly women, who showed up and met. And also, we couldn't get a permit. We decided to try to get a permit so we could have the music. Starhawk said, don't ask. Do not ask. And we asked anyway, and they said no. And so then we decided, okay, now we do it without a permit. And so we decided to go on the sidewalk, but pretty soon we didn't. We took over the streets, and it was very fun. It was the most fun I've had in a decade. And I tell all of this to say, I think it's terribly important for us to be sure that we really drop down into being female. Being women, especially, I guess I'm really talking to us non-Indigenous women, you know, because we get kind of in our heads, right? And we have these strategies, and I think a lot of the strategies are stagnant. And that if we can really just get the Shakti going, we'll be spontaneous and creative and it will work. And I think the conservatives often don't even know what to do with it because no one arrested us or anything because we weren't protesting. We had the music, we had Dancing Queen from Mamma Mia. That was my inspiration, Dancing Queen, like we were going to be the Maenads from ancient Greece, and we were going to dance in our nocturnal frenzy. And it was really exciting and very effective, and who knows, you know, maybe we broke the spell.
There isn't much to add to that powerful suggestion of what to do in the elections, but I just wanted to say that in answer to Isabella's questions, I think also simply doing the legwork of spreading information about how we're brainwashed, what the reality is behind the different agendas is so important. Because what I did, for instance, knowing that I wasn't going to get elected in the European elections, in my leaflets, a brochure that I was handing out, I had all this information of the key things about when they talk about saving the welfare state or when they talk about competitiveness, remember that what this means is. And then I would just lay it out. So even if I didn't get the vote, thousands of people got the message. And it wasn't like I had to do an extra campaign. I combined the two because of, you know, and another thing I wanted to ask you, if you can help me with this, I think that we need to think about how we are communicating about the gift, just the way in the academia, how to teach about racism and sexism and heterosexism and so on. I don't know that anyone's ever done a didactics or pedagogical approach to that, but that's so important. I know I'm too direct and undiplomatic, and I hammer people over the head with, you know, like, shame on you, and it doesn't always work. So I could do with some help in, you know, bringing the message across in a more soft and maternal way. But I think that it would be great to have a seminar just on the techniques of getting the people. I mean, there's a lot of therapists here who know, you know, you have role reversal and you imagine that you're the evil capitalist and somebody else has to be the poor elderly that's been abandoned. And, you know, there are all kinds of techniques, I'm sure, that we could benefit from because it is so important that we get the message across. Now we have the knowledge. We have enough knowledge. Now we just need to find out how to pass that message and get people receptive to it. And then if you want to give me any of this advice, I have my electoral little paper still left over, so it has my address and my number. You can't vote for me anymore, it has my number, but if you could send me this information, I would really appreciate it.
And we vote for you. We'll vote for you.
Well, there's a real long tradition with the great female bear and the daughter bear constellations. It's very widespread globally. And it has to do with conjuring these constellations to protect, to inspire, and to perform miracles. So that's what I'm going to do now. Ursa Major, Ursa Minor. They make me cry.
Support our global female and maternal agency and activism. Ursa Major, Ursa Minor. Support the demise, the denunciation, and the demise of our global female and maternal slaveries, especially the sexual and reproductive slaveries of so many daughters. Ursa Major, Ursa Minor, support our female-identified economic leaders. To me, a leader is anybody who speaks up or does anything. Support their guiding principles, their tools and tasks of survival. For instance, along what Jensine Larson, founder of World Pulse, great mag. Along what Jen Seidman Larson calls the new Silk Road of female economic leadership, quote, hot commodities are no longer textiles and spices. They are the shared values of caregiving, healthy ecosystems, spiritual well-being, community, and beauty. Ursa Major, Ursa Minor, support our female-identified religious leaders, however they may be defined. But I wanted to call attention to Jimmy Carter, who very bravely on July 15th of this summer left the Christian church after 60 years because of its sexism. Right on, Jimmy. Ursa Major, Ursa Minor, support the cleansing of our planet, steeped in the pollution of rapist capitalism. Ursa Major, Ursa Minor, support the healing of life-threatening illnesses, thereby caused in plants, animals, humans, and all of our habitats. Ursa Major, Ursa Minor, support the denunciation and the end of these 4 wars, the war on girls and women, female slavery, and sexual, reproductive, domestic, maternal, caretaking, emotional, etc. terms. The war on colonized, neo-colonized, globalized peoples, it's really all of us, slavery in terms of life, labor, goods, traditions, resources. The war of rape culture capitalism with its invasions, conquests, dominations, thefts, exploitations, and genocides. And the war on nature with so many plants, animals, and habitats barely surviving. Patriarchal economy is unbearable. On all these war fronts, as much is taken and as little is given back as possible in the exact opposite of the gift economy, the maternal and parenting economy. Ursa Major, Ursa Minor, support the denunciation and the end of the imbalance of an exclusively male deity, albeit one with a merciful and gracious side and many generous and compassionate followers. Nevertheless, so many of his clergy and imperial leaders have justified, legitimized, and sacralized all 4 of these economic wars for millennia, whether through church and state alliances or other traditions, customs, laws, and forms of education. Patriarchal religion is unbearable. Ursa Major, Ursa Minor, support our understanding of pure, life-sustaining giving as the healthy heart of economic order. Ursa Major, Ursa Minor, support our understanding of motherhood as exemplary and quintessential, as the most important function within a society, as the wisest foundation for economy and religion, and as the prime inspiration for maternal humanity. Ursa Major, Ursa Minor, I conjure you now as the greatest source of celestial power. Support all efforts to bear the mother world to earth. Woo!
I think one of the really internal battles that we have as women is the kind of value we attach to men. Those men did not give birth to themselves. We birthed them. We have given them the power. And so until us women, we do the work of reversing whatever power we give them, this battle is never going to be won. This war is never going to be won. And I got that message at a very young age. And so when we make preferences for men, for them not to do certain things, or when we fall in love with them and we give ourselves away and forget that we have needs too, when we give birth to a son and now all of a sudden we are a woman, we have just sacrificed the women race.
Hello, I'm Eleanor Gaden. I think one of our responsibilities as mothers is to work on the issue of how to raise our boys. I have been working on a book for some years about the myth of what it is to be a man in America and violence. And the book ends with the situation of how to raise a boy. But I want to go back a bit in my own journey to say how I got there. In 1968, I was teaching in the Harvard Divinity School, and my graduate students, women, said to me, we have to translate whatever we write for our professors, and they all spoke English. So I said, well, what is it? And I realized what they had to leave out of their papers, out of their dissertations, was themselves, their own voice, their own experience. So I said, oh, that's what I've always done. Anyway, that made me a feminist. So out of that experience in the Harvard Divinity School came a book that I wrote. Because I had been asked to teach a course on the iconography of the Virgin Mary and the Hindu goddess. So that gave me a chance to look at goddesses everywhere. And I wrote a book about the once and future goddess, a symbol for our time. I more recently went back to India, which is my area of field research, to study a Neolithic tradition that still survives, barely, but in the villages in the state of eastern India of Orissa. And there I found that of the 51,000 villages, each one had their very own village goddess, whom they called Ma. Now, Ma is a name very used really for every female in Orissa. Little 2-year-olds are called Ma. But the village goddess is called Ma, and she's a tree or a rock. However, the villagers envision her as an elderly, wise woman walking around at night. They can't quite see her, but sometime in that liminal time between when it's just dawn, they do see this elderly white woman, coming back from having been making her round of the village to see that everything is all right, returning to her tree. But think about this tree. I mean, the tree is a most wonderful source of regeneration, and that's what Ma is. That's what she stands for, regeneration. The tree, it comes out of the ground, the earth, and it spreads out its branches, and then it leaves, and then seeds, and the seeds fall down to the earth, and the cycle starts all over again. What is comforting for and India is a very patriarchal place. And even though the primary religion in this state is goddess worship, Shakta, that really has nothing to do with helping human women. I mean, the men all worship the goddess and go home and beat their wives. But on the other hand, the village goddess, Ma, is more modest. She says, I can't do anything about patriarchy. I can't do anything about globalization. But she's there as a witness for the women's suffering, the women's oppression, and the women, and this witnessing is very important to them because they communicate with her in what they call their dreams. Well, it's not our ordinary dreams like we would call dream. It's really a vision. Somehow they have a dialogue, and there's no hierarchy here. They go back and forth whatever the issues of the day are. My own analysis of this as a Western academic is that they're only accessing knowledge they already have inside their unconscious, but in any case, it gives them tools with which to cope with life. So, and with the ongoing crisis of life. So I am looking forward to perhaps presenting this to this forum next year, and hopefully the book that I have written will be out. So the last thing I want to say is, I think that at last I have found my tribe.